everybody, and welcome to an absolutely glorious morning on California's legendary Monterey Peninsula as we get set to start the qualifying process here at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca for the fourth and final round of the Intercontinental GT Challenge. Hi, everybody. I'm Greg Creamer. Delighted, as always, to be joined by Calvin Fish, who is a class winner at Daytona and Sebring. And joining us this weekend, so lucky to have John Watson, five-time Grand Prix winner, twice in the U.S., once in California at Long Beach in 1983. So, gentlemen, great to have you both with us here. We start with the first round of qualifying, which is a rather unique format for the qualifying process. Each of the teams, Cal, has three drivers, save one car. We'll explain that in a minute. And in this qualifying session, each of those drivers gets time in the car.
They do. It's essentially 3 15-minute mini qualifying sessions. So it's dedicated between the three guys that you got in your lineup. As you mentioned, there is a quirk in that there's a two-driver lineup within this field. So the second driver, they'll have to run two of those sessions. And then it's the fastest time from each driver, then averaged out, and that will really set up our pole shootout for this afternoon.
And speaking of the pole shootout, John, obviously everybody's sort of angling toward that because that will determine the top 15 places and the starting order for those teams. So important to get there, but there's some strategy that's always at play in that process, isn't there?
Yes, I mean, part of it is the nature of Laguna Seca. I mean, we're coming up to 10:30 in the morning. The track temperatures are lower. There's generally a little bit more bite and grip in the racetrack. But the key for the pro teams, the teams that are most likely to be the winner at the end of the 8 hours on Sunday afternoon, will look at these three qualifying sessions as simply a way to get through into that shootout. They're not going to use too many of their sets of tires. There are 10 sets of tires available from Friday forward. Plus, once you get into the shootout, you get an additional set of tires. I would imagine, for example, you take the pro teams, they may run one new set of tires all the way through these three qualifying segments. Only if they find themselves being close to that 15th position bubble would they consider putting on a second new set. They're conserving tires, and that's what I suspect we're going to see on Sunday. Tire management, tire conservation, and if you don't need to use them this morning, save them for Sunday.
Well, it's kind of interesting, isn't it? If you can make it work, it's an 8-hour race. You'd like to be able to put on a virtually new set of tires every time you do one of the stops. So that's part of the strategy you're talking about. Now, of course, the better you qualify, Shay, the better you can run in the race.
12 months ago, it was a very good day for Marcus Winkelhock and Audi. Intercontinental GT Challenge won here at Laguna Seca. Now you come back with Audi to defend your championship again. How's it been going so far?
So far it was really good. Yesterday in the pre-qualifying we had P2. The car works really good. I have a strong driver lineup, a very good team behind me, and for sure the target is to win the race again.
With three Audis here being brought over from Europe, how important is it for the brand to come away with another race win?
I think it's important for us, and our target is not to win only with one car. Our target is to score as many points, as you said, for the brand Audi, and to win the championship for the brand. And at the end, I don't focus too much, just on the championship. I think everybody of us we should focus on our race, do a good job, no mistakes, and then actually we see where we end up.
Third in points coming into this weekend. Good luck making it 2 in a row.
Thank you.
Yeah, he had a great season last year, but you hear him talking about the manufacturer scenario. Audi has ruled the roost here in the Manufacturers' Championship the 2 years the championship has existed in 16 and 17, but they come in trailing here, so this is big.
But it is tight. 9 points sounds like a lot, but remember, it's your top two cars from each mark that scores points. So there's 43 points on hand here this weekend for any manufacturer to score. So John is very much, game on in terms of the manufacturers. The driver's tile is a little bit more separated, but in manufacturers, that is important.
Calvin, make no mistake, but Marcus Winkelhock, he knows precisely the reason why the RD team, the WRT RD team are here, and that is to win the Manufacturers' Championship. There is another battle going on for the drivers, but principally it will be, in my view, they'll be looking to win the Manufacturers' Championship.
The check comes from, right?
Well, at the end of the day, someone's got to pay the bills.
Well, and that's a very good point. And this whole championship is designed as more of a manufacturer championship. It's intercontinental, indeed, all these races, different continents. But the concept is that the manufacturers can support local team programs. You can also bring them in. But it's very much a manufacturer-driven championship. Drivers' championship's important, but this is all about those various emblems on the sides of these cars.
It very much is so, and with that, of course, you get local track knowledge. Wright Motorsports, for example, are running the Porsche factory guys here, so they know this racetrack very well, so there's an advantage in it. The disadvantage is you don't have the continuity through the four-race championship to run each race with the same group, but certainly coming to this racetrack with a locally based team here in North America anyway should certainly be a plus point.
But how do you guys imagine... You've got your teams that have been supporting this series throughout the year. You've now got the Bentley team here. You've got the Straka Mercedes team. You've got WRT Audi and Land. I mean, you don't get to see these teams operate in domestic races here. What are you going to expect? Because I know what they can do. I don't know what your teams are capable of doing.
I think it's very exciting, John, to see, these teams competing here in North America, but certainly we know the reputations of these teams like WRT. Land have come over here and certainly made a big impression on big sports car races here in the last couple of years. So when you look at the driver lineups, I mean, this is some really killer guys out there who can really get the job done.
Well, walking the paddock earlier during the testing sessions, and some of the American teams and the GT4 drivers that are here, and we'll talk about that in a minute, the expression on their faces about just how fast and serious this field of GT3 competitors was said an awful lot about what's going on. And as you take a look here are the standings for the drivers right now. Vautier and Marcello come in here tied. The interesting thing is that they've been split. One of the guys that's next up in the points, Mauro Engel, is going to be running with Vautier, so
he's eliminated.
He's fallen on the sword for the manufacturers to make sure that they get a championship.
Wait a minute. I spoke to these guys this morning, Tristan Vautier, Mauro Engel, and I said, how are you going to divide it up? Because you've got Marcello in one team, you've got Tristan Vautier in the second team, and Mauro Engel said, Tristan Vautier's promised me $100,000 if we make sure we win. I think he might have been joking, but the sentiment was there.
Yep.
Yes.
Same thing for the Audi guys. You look at Winkelhock and Haase. I mean, they've been split as well. They've run all season long. They're tied in points right now. Audi think if the Mercedes guys should falter a little bit, we want 2 bullets in the gun in terms of trying to capture that championship.
Yep, absolutely. They are playing the game, no question about it.
Greg, one driver in amongst those you see on the screen there that I think we need to keep an eye on, I think he's outstanding. And that's the younger brother of Lawrence Van Voor, Dries Van Voor, in the 37 Audi. He has been the gun guy, really, pretty much over the last 6-7 races in Europe and towards the end of last year as well. And he, in qualifying in single speed terms, more so it'll be in the shootout rather than maybe in these 3 qualifying segments. He'll be one of the 3 drivers in that car. But really keep an eye on Dries Van Voor, a big talent, for my mind, for the future in GT racing.
He is wickedly quick. You take a look at what he's been able to achieve this year. But this whole lineup, I mean, Robin Frein's there. I mean, what he's got on his plate for next year and what he's juggling. I mean, Formula E, as well as the success he's had in the open wheel formula coming up before getting into sports car racing. This is a top shelf field.
Marciello, what a season he's had. Pretty much dominated in terms of championship wins anyway. The Blancpain titles, comes here with another chance to win another crown this year. And he's a young man who kind of slipped through the single-seater net. So great to see him performing at a high level in sports car racing.
Yep, he's the first year as a pro driver as well, as a factory driver. Alvaro Parent, familiar to U.S. audiences. Shay?
Track experience around Laguna Seca. How important is that going to be over the course of the 8-hour race?
I love this track, and we had a great race here with MSR. We won the race, the IMSA event here. So yeah, it's always great, to come back, know the track well. Obviously, it's a completely different car, completely different characteristics. We'll see how it goes, but we're working hard, and here again, like I said before, the tire degradation is fundamental on this place.
Good luck this weekend. A lot of people cheering for that number 9 Bentley.
Oh, thank you. Let's see.
Yeah, interesting development for Alvaro. I mean, obviously, he's run the Intercontinental GT Challenge in the Mercedes team, but obviously this was a deal that he already had set, which kind of worked nicely because that's the team now that Marcello has been slotted in with when they decided to split him out.
So a lot of shuffling going on between the various teams, but what a record he has here. He clinched the Pirelli World Challenge title here back in 2016. He won the GTD race here in IMSA competition just a couple of months ago. So he's had a happy hunting ground here at Mazda at Laguna Seca.
Yeah, he absolutely has. This is, and he's such a great talent and also just truly one of the nice blokes in the paddock. There's no question. He's a great addition. So here we go. And again now, the way that this works out, 3 drivers per car except the one, and we'll talk about that. So this is the first group of drivers going out. The one team that's running only 2 drivers is one of our GT4 cars, and that's Murillo Racing. And the way that works, then the driver, the first of the 2 nominated drivers, will do the first 2 of these split sessions, if you will, and then the third driver will come in. And again, double the entry that we had at this race here last year in its inaugural season. Great growth. It's great to see. And we also have this big field of GT4 machinery here that are going to certainly spice the mix up just a little bit as the racing gets going. And somebody, it looks like, John, in the preceding session has spiced the track up a little
indeed,
bit.
Just coming through 4 and 5 and up the hill towards the corkscrew. There's obviously been an oil leak. There had been another race series on prior to this qualifying session getting underway, and the put down speedy dry. It'll clear up pretty quickly, but you can see just coming into turn 5, that line, that white line, as you watch coming through, it's just slightly offline, fortunately, as the Murillo Mercedes comes through. That's the 2 driver pairing in the single 2 driver pairing in this race. So it's something, another thing for drivers to consider. And bearing in mind, we've heard all the pro drivers talk about one thing so far, which is basically tyre, they call it degradation, just the tyre being used too quickly, too long, and then the performance drop-off that follows.
And I think you were spot on earlier, John, in terms of talking about that tyre conservation, not only during your stint, but the 10 sets that you get allocated for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We had practice sessions here yesterday. We saw some teams elect to skip that first practice session to save track time, save tyres, essentially. But talking to John Wright, who runs the Porsche here this weekend, he said, we use 1 set on Friday.
Absolutely.
We're going to try and get through this 3-session quali with another set. We'll then get an additional set for pole shootout. That means they've had a total of 11. They will have used 3, so that'll give them 8 brand new sets to utilize in the 8-hour race tomorrow.
I mean, the tyres that they would have used, or the tyre set they used on Friday, probably there's not a lot left in it. It might be the limp home mode tyre.
Right.
If that's the situation, you get to a situation where you've got no tyres left and you get a flat. You can cut a tyre down so easily. Running a curb or maybe a bit of debris in the racetrack, you never know. Might cut a tyre down.
Look right here at the number 175, the Mercedes-AMG Team Sun Energy 1 Racing, entry 1 of 2 cars that are running that very exotic, recognizable graphics package, the Sun Energy 1 program. This is the car where Mauro Engel has ended up, and he's in the car right now and going to do his best to get out there and get a time. The car is shared with Maxi Book and Tristan Vautier, and Mauro behind the wheel right now.
Essentially, this is a 15-minute open session. You can run as many laps as you want. And then there's kind of a little mini break between the point where driver 1 gets out and driver 2 then starts his mini 15-minute session as well.
One would assume, and I'm going to make that assumption, that Q1, Mauro Engel on board of the 175 Mercedes, is the session where we're going to see the fastest lap times of these 3 qualifying sessions. Because I'm again assuming that everybody in the pit lane, in the pro category particularly, have fitted that brand new set of Pirelli rubber to their cars. So as they go through the session, they may not want to do all 15 minutes on track. If they set a time which they think is a comfortable time that will be enough to carry them forward, they may just say, we're going to pull the rest of the session.
Very good point. Fastest time set in pre-qualifying yesterday afternoon was a 1 minute 24.347 second lap. Currently, Brian Sellers in the K-Pax Bentley tops the order right now at a 1:28.1, so we're a bit off of what we've seen for outright fastest times, but again, very early in the session. But it's cooler than it was than the session in pre-qualifying ran. So you would suspect, Engel running way wide.
And you got to be careful, John. You don't want to lock up those tires and flat spot them. So,
I mean, Mauro Engel's been around the racetrack. He just made a mistake, whether he misjudged his braking, But what he didn't want to do, you're quite right, of course these cars have got ABS on them, but nevertheless you can tune that in or out on your ABS dial on the car, but you do not want to go and flat spot a brand new set of Pirelli
Your
tires.
teammate would not be impressed when you give him a flat spotted set to go on with.
Forget your teammate, it's the team boss you've got to answer to.
By the way, the 19, it was the 19 of Robin Freins had gone to the top. Now it is the 17 of Sheldon van der Linde that has gone to the top, one of the Audi Sport Team WRT entries. So look at what happened here, Cal.
He just gets into the corkscrew really hot, and I think he recognized he's got in there deep and hadn't got the tire temps up into their sweet spot yet, John, so he just elected to take it straight a little bit and just give that lap up.
On my one and only race here, back in 2010, I did something very similar because I expected to see the apex turn. What I didn't appreciate is you don't see the apex before you commit. And I think that was almost a case of Maro Engel just overrunning into the braking zone. He did the right thing. He kept the car straight. He didn't try and scuff the car through and then maybe damage a tire, so he got away with it. But it's a little error that he will remember and not make it a second time.
Look there at the 911 Wright Motorsports Porsche, currently third in this session. Romain Dumas in that car at this stage. And, of course, Wright Motorsports, very familiar to U.S. audiences, have had a tremendous run in World Challenge over the years. Pat Long in his championships, but also now in other endurance racing here in the country. And what a lineup they have in this car. Dumas joined by just no less a lineup than Frederick Makovecki and Dirk Werner, who've been running the Manthey Porsche pretty much most of the year. But again, the way that they do this is they will support a customer team, and Wright certainly has earned the right, pardon the pun, to be able to do this here.
Romain Dumas being a little bit naughty on the GT4 Cayman coming down into turn 11. He wanted track position and he backed off coming through turns 9 and 10, and then all of a sudden hit the Cayman right on his gearbox, and he just basically he's destroyed the Cayman's lap to give himself the opportunity. You know, these guys are not out there to be nice. They're out there to do the best they can for their teams. That was a graphic example.
Well, an interesting thing we talked about, this is double the field that we've had that we had here last year. This is a smallish track, just over 2.2 miles in length. So twice the entry means half the space on the track. Boy, big move there.
Jordan Pepper down to the inside. I think he's in quali mode, and the Audi's still getting up to speed here, so we want to get through there and not mess his lap up.
Christopher Mies in the number 19 WRT Audi. And interesting, those three Audis, the Land cars and the Land car and the two WRT Audi cars, you see the unique graphic package on it. When you park them side by side, it basically creates the American flag. And just honoring that this is the season finale here in the United States, and a real tribute, obviously.
Christopher Mies would not have wanted to do that particularly and let the Bentley get through, but again it's about finding his own part of the racetrack. Bentley maybe struggling a little bit more here this weekend than the principal rivals it has with Mercedes-Benz and Audi, and ordinarily the Bentley is one of those cars. It's a fantastic car. The Gen 2 Bentley Continental GT3 is an outstanding. I mean, it is a race car that is now. They designed it as a race car before they made it a production car, whereas the Gen 1 was a production car, which M Sport made into a race car. So Bentley have gone the other route. They built it as a race car and then adapted it to road use.
Yeah, talking to all of the various marques, it seems like the Audis and the Mercedes seem to be a little bit easier on the tyres this weekend, John. The Bentley really is struggling to keep the rear tyres under it, and you'd expect that. And coming into this race this weekend, they expected it to not be a strong circuit for them, but nonetheless, three-car entry with the two M Sport cars, joined by the local K-Pax team. Oh, Pepper really wide there. That's hairy going through turn 6.
Scary stuff. I mean, and you're right what you're saying. I mean, essentially, the Bentley is normally very light on its tyres, but the preponderance of the average speed of the majority of the corners here and the torque that the Bentley has, it's just working those rear tyres out a little bit differently to the Audi, which of course is a mid-engine, I would call mid-engine, rear-engine car. The Mercedes configuration is not dissimilar to the Bentley, but if you open the hood, I think it's the hood, I call it a bonnet, but it's the hood. You need a pair of step ladders to get up to look down to see where that engine is. It's so far in the chassis, right back. I mean, unbelievable bit of engineering to get this car to the level of expertise that M Sport have managed to do.
Championship leader Marciello to the top, 24-2.
Yep, the number 43, that's the Mercedes-AMG Team Straka. Mercedes GT3, beautiful cars. We continue to watch Jordan Pepper here He's down the order a little bit, sitting in the 11th spot. When I talked to Darren Law, he said the difference between the Gen 1, John, and the Gen 2 of this, he said it's absolutely immense. I was wondering, the Gen 1 is known to be very gentle on tires. Are they going to be somebody maybe later in the race where they could be a serious player?
I think they could be. I mean, I think the concern for K-Pax, they haven't run this configuration of Pirelli tire before this weekend. They did a short test at Sonoma about a month ago where they got Brian Sellers some seat time. He's got to get used to that right-hand drive car, get used to the Bentley. He's never raced it before, so there's a big learning curve for Brian here this weekend. Obviously raced with the team last year full-time in Pirelli World Challenge.
And this track, talking about the tire wear, for those of you not familiar with this facility, it is abrasive on tires. It's always been difficult on tires. And also, you can see that new green. That's brand new in the corkscrew there. The cars would tend to drop tires, and it pulls this very abrasive sand up onto the track. So you've got an abrasive track to start with, that then you get this sandy grit on it, which causes the car to slide. It just tortures tires.
Again, up at the corkscrew, that change, everybody that I've spoken to say it's a big improvement because it gives them a better sight of where actually they've got to turn, but also it prevents drivers who would drop a wheel off the inside and drag all the sand or dust or gravel, particularly gravel. Now that's an interesting parking maneuver, isn't it? You wouldn't pass your driving test. Maybe
I think the Aston Martin
was out of position.
Was out of position a bit. That's the 54. That's Pat Long. That's the Black Swan Racing entry. That he shares with Tim Pappison, Jerome Liqui-Moly, and Long had that car up into fourth before he came in and pitted, so a great lap.
And I think to John's point, I think these guys, once you get that peak lap, you don't want to just keep pounding around. You want to be able to utilize these tires for driver 2 and driver 3 in this session. So I think you'll see a lot of these guys kind of park it at this stage of the game and be settled with that lap time they put in.
I've only got just over 3 minutes of the session remaining. Even the 8 Bentley making its way back in. But
very tricky pit in here, John.
You have
to be careful.
Even in my little Suzuka, all of them 120 horsepower at the front wheels, had to slow it down.
Yeah, nice job there, Vincent Abril in. And here's a little bit of an interesting development here. Not a surprise to those who know what he's capable of, but Jack Hawksworth has been brought into the 44 Strocker Racing entry for the Mercedes-AMG team, and he's put in a lap. He's got it up to third.
Yeah, he's just been the fast man in the GTD category, the IMSA Championship this year, and 4 poles, I think, for Lexus, 5 fastest laps. So,
in terms of
man
raw
is
speed,
a demon. Yeah,
he's the gun.
They didn't end up with a podium, ironically, so didn't have the best of luck in the race season, but certainly showed his speed all season long.
But do you think that 44 Strocker Mercedes, is that your sleeper for this race? Because you've got Adrian Tombe, Christian Vitoros. I know Christian Vitoros when he did way back in the 20s, A1GP. Yeah. Adrian Tombe, I don't know, but his dad Patrick was my teammate in 1979 at McLaren.
Yeah, both Tombe and Vitoros obviously very successful in DTM, and I think if you can compete at that level, John, it's one of the toughest GT championships in the world. So this is stellar driver lineups. There's no shortage of talent in the field this weekend.
Marina Franchitti in the Ferrari.
Lone Ferrari in the field.
Yeah. It's a shame. That's a great customer car.
It truly is. And this is the Vital Speed team. And, you got Marino Franchitti out behind the wheel of the car right now. Kind of a neat story for that team. You also have Jeff Westphal. But Trevor Beck, it's the young son of the team owner. He has been racing in the Ferrari Challenge in the 458 Evo class, where they've just carried that class while the top classes are now 488. And he has been, the latter half of the season in particular, he has really found speed and form. And what a great opportunity for him. We saw him in the Pirelli World Challenge, Cal. They showed up and ran Portland to put a toe in the water to get ready in a way for this event. And what he's learned from then to now, I think, has already been huge. But what a great opportunity here.
Well, he surrounded himself with great people. He had Jeff Siegel doing his coaching and mentoring him early on. He's got Franchitti and Westphal here, and they're just great blokes to have on your team and showcase what you can do.
Marcello's time, by the way, just for reference, a 124.212, about 0.3 clear of Mauro Engel in the 175. Sun One Energy Mercedes at a 124.5, then Hawksworth at a 124.6. Times very, very close. As a matter of fact, in the first practice session on Friday, we were marveling. The 2 Porsches were 1-2, and they got some quick laps in early. But from 3rd to 12th, the margin between each of those cars was down to thousandths of a second. Anybody who wonders about BOP, love it or not, they've got it right here.
Well, listen, there's a whole industry called horse racing. and it's based on handicaps. And the reason it's done is because they want all horses in a race to finish more or less line abreast going across the finish line. And the same thing effectively works in Blancpain GT, which is my background over here for the Pirelli World Series. It's fantastic motorsport. It is so close, so competitive, and there's always that little bit of variation that no one manufacturer dominates, and that's the key for me for the success of these championships across the world, is that no one manufacturer is dominant.
This car, by the way, the 65 second of the Murillo Racing Mercedes-AMG GT4 machines with Probert, Mosing, and Piscatel, and great to see them out there. But the guy who went quickest in this session, who also happens to be your point leader, is standing by in pit lane, was Shea Adam.
Well, Raffaele, for now, your job is done at least. The fastest driver through the first part of qualifying is the more speedy car.
I mean, it's behaving quite well. We worked a lot compared yesterday. We still need to find a bit of balanced performance, but I mean, we're improving. All the team new on this track, so I mean, we still need to work a bit of the balance, but it's a good start. At then it's not so difficult to go into Super Pole because it's only 16 GT3, so it's 15 to go in Super Pole. We're in a good position to go in Super Pole, and then we will see where we are for the race.
And if you do get to Super Pole, might it be you driving the car then?
Yeah, it's me who do Super Pole. So I mean, it's always excited to do Super Pole when the track is quite clear. You have only the best driver on track. I mean, it's a good feeling, but it's 8-hour race anyway, so we'll not finish after Super Pole for sure.
Good luck this weekend to you and the whole Straka Racing team.
Thank you.
Yeah, he pointed out the perspective there, didn't he? It's nice and it's fun, but it's an 8-hour race. If we're not at the front, that isn't the end of the world by any means.
Yeah, and I think that comes down to your strategy. I actually spoke to one team manager yesterday who said we're going to get into that shootout and then pretty much save that set of tires. We're not really worried whether we qualify in the top 5 or 15th. If we can try and utilize that extra set we get in the shootout for the race and they're still in good shape, that's more of a factor.
Let's take a look here at the top 5 after this first part of the triple qualifying, if you will, in GT3 Pro. It's Marcello, Engel, Hawksworth, Long, and Linda. So you've got a nice mix of manufacturers up there as well in the top 5 in the GT3 Pro category. And you can see those times. It's a little bit of a split between Marcello and Engel, but after that, it is just amazingly close.
You've watched him this year, Marcello, in the Blancpain Series, John. I mean, what a talent he is. He's kind of slipped through that single-seater net. He was connected with Ferrari for a while, Sauber F1 test program briefly, but now he's gotten into these GT cars. I mean, I spoke to Tim Sugden yesterday. He said he can just get it done immediately. He just goes out and bam, it's right there.
He's like a number of young drivers who have missed the single-seater. The train's left on either because of budgetary reasons or lack of availability of teams. Raffaele Marcello is an outstanding talent. We have seen that for the last 2 seasons in our Blancpain championships. He's exciting. He is Italian, and he brings that quality. You think of all the great Italian drivers you can remember. Even I go back as far as Nuvolari. I mean, they are something remarkable and special. He's one of the special ones.
Yeah, and his results certainly are showing. You just saw a shot of Alex Riberas getting ready to crawl into the number 17 Audi Sport Team WRT R8 LMS. Nice to have Alex back on this side of the pond. Obviously, a lot of success in endurance racing with Alex Job, and did a half season of Pirelli World Challenge and was very fast.
Yeah, and he was associated with Ferrari there for a while, but now he's found a new home with Audi, and he's really come on very strongly. He's had some really good results this year, John, and I think for young Alex Riberas, I mean, I think that WR team is a super spot for him. They are the best in the business, and he's going to do very well there with that squad.
Well, he certainly proved himself in the racing, the GT series that I'm involved with. I mean, he's been at the very front. The worst thing that happened to him was the final round of the championship in Barcelona earlier this season was he got wrong-footed and consequently lost the potential of that car to win the championship.
As you see there, the results in GT4, the top 5 at this category. But we were talking about how quick Pat Long had gone in the Black Swan Racing Porsche, and a busy Shea Adam has found Pat. Apparently had a little glitch there with the interview. Sorry about that. Pat Long, obviously very familiar to North American audiences and a lot of success internationally as well.
Great lap there by Shimshak to put that Mercedes on top. It looked like the Fords had the pace yesterday. Jay Buford, a lot of success with that PF Racing team this year. A couple of wins in the GTS World Challenge Championship. So
yeah, that car was
you'd
fifth
expect in the mix as well.
Yeah, that car was fifth at its best yesterday, so they found something. And let's not forget, there's a look at that Black Swan Porsche. Beautiful graphics, as always, on that car. But the team that was also fast in that pre-qualifying in GT4 yesterday was the Racers Group and Spencer Pompelli with Derek DeBoer on board. I mean, I think we've got a great mix in that GT4 category. It's going to make for some fun. Now, this is where this qualifying session now, as we said, gets a little bit more intricately and involved and certainly interesting, as these drivers will not go out. These are the second drivers nominated for these cars. They go out for their session, and yes, they want to get a good time individually, but what happens is the time gets combined with the guy from the first session, then averaged, and that determines then what the order is. And then when the third driver gets in for the third part of the session, they're all combined and averaged, and that determines the qualifying order. Top 15 go to the pole shootout, and the rest of the field is just gridded based on that combined average from this session. So interesting things to be taking a look at here. This is a fun one here. The number 113, the RHC Jorgensen Strom BMW M4 GT4 that runs in the GT4 category. And you see there's a thing on the side that says Mark Cars. They've been doing a lot of racing in the European Series and some of those great endurance races, John, and they've teamed up with the Mark Cars program that helps support their program. And some of these drivers, particularly Darren Jorgensen and Brett Strom, have actually driven some of the Mark Cars in some races too. So it's a great dynamic when you're racing internationally like that.
It really is. They just got back from Spa a couple of weeks ago. They're going to be running the COTA race, the endurance race next month. They're talking about doing Dubai, Bathurst at the beginning of next year. So they're busy boys right now.
It's all part of getting the experience on an international level, and I suspect also having just a wee bit of fun.
And those GT4 qualifying times, this session is important. Not many of those guys are going to creep into that shootout. Top 15 only go through, so pretty much your grid for GT4 is going to be set within this essentially 1 hour session in the 3 mini sessions that we're competing in right now.
We also have 2 TCR level cars here, both out of the Brian Herta Autosport Hyundai camp. And it's nice to see. You see one of those cars sitting there. The black one behind it, those are the 2 team cars. And this is interesting for Brian Herta. He and his son Colton are teamed up in one of the cars. Now, they did the Thunderhill 25 for the last 2 years. But that's not really a pro race. And Brian said, this is my first time back at a full-on pro race in a decade.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, John, Brian Herta had such a great career, but he's probably more known for the Zanardi pass up in the corkscrew than anything else.
All I remember seeing Alex Zanardi in that pass, I mean, it took the light from my eyes. I watched that race live back in the UK, and I thought, oh, my God, how did he ever think he could get away with it, let alone get away with it? But that's part of the legend here of the corkscrew at Laguna Seca.
Yeah, nothing like making an absolute wide-open attack, going off track in a turn that drops some 10 stories.
Yeah,
that's commitment.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
And we saw Ringer van der Zande make a similar move on Dane Cameron last year in prototype competition here. So it's almost a cut-and-paste move.
Taking a look in the Pro-Am category, just to update you, the 6th-place overall car is the fastest in the Pro-Am category after that first bit of qualifying. That's the Sun Energy 1 Racing, number 75, that has Kenny Habul, who will be out in this session for the qualifying. Michael Grenier was the driver who went out in that first session and got them up to the top currently of the Pro-Am category. Lucas Stoltz, who's been fairly busy running 4 endurance races here in the United States, as well as a very busy program in Europe. Third driver on board that car. Second in the Pro-Am category is the number 63 DXDT Racing entry that Ryan Dial hustled around here. So, all right, now Shea Adam has been able to find Robert Frines, one of the drivers that we've been talking about, as a real shoe.
Robin, the year started out pretty well for you and Dries Vanthoor and Stewart Leonard at the 12 Hours of Bathurst. It was very exciting to go there and to get a win. Can you do it here at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca?
I think from the last few tests we had here, it doesn't look bad. We've always been in the top 5, so we're quite strong. The Mercedes also looks very strong, but everybody's playing their games a bit, so we will see. But it's not going to be easy for sure not.
Now that your job is done watching the screens, is it more nerve-wracking?
We just need to be in the top 15 for quali to go into Super Pole. So I just did one lap to get my lap times on the board. It's not really stressful now, but Super Pole after lunch will be pretty stressful for us, yeah.
3 strong drivers in your car. Which one of you guys gets to do the Super Pole?
Dries. So far, it's Dries who does Super Pole now. He's in the car now, as he's the lightest. So we want to get as much forward as we can, because overtaking here is quite difficult, as we saw last year as well. So being in front is quite crucial here.
Good luck this weekend.
Thank you.
Just interesting to listen to Robin saying that Dries is in the car now because he's the lightest. Is that a way of saying that he's also the quickest then? A racing driver would never concede that.
Yes.
I mean, Robin Friens is brilliant. We know that. He's outstanding in an Audi. But Dries van Thor is, for me, the coming driver for the future, the longer term of the WRT Audi team. And that's Robin just using that little bit of language, maybe not his first language, but nevertheless explaining it, I think, concisely enough.
Yeah, I like that, as you said, a good way to couch the speed. And we're seeing right now...
Look pretty frisky there
yeah,
on the outlap.
These drivers obviously want to get by any of the GT4 traffic that may have queued up in pit lane in front of them, so they've got clear track.
That is the key. They want to get that lap done as quickly as possible, take less life out of those Pirelli P0s, and allow driver 3 to have some meat left to go on attack.
Just watching the number 7, Stephen, I haven't changed the transponder, it's Stephen Kane, according to our sheets. So Stephen Kane is the guy in the Bentley who's always been, for me, the go-to guy. Stephen comes from my part of the world, Northern Ireland, and he has been an outstanding, he's been a star with Bentley over the last 3 seasons, and expect to see fireworks. They may put him in for the latter stages of an 8-hour race when it's there to be taken. It's not going to be a gift, it's there to be taken.
Well, that's part of the game, too. I mean, having that outright pace is important, but when you get into these long endurance races, especially when you're dealing with traffic and the like, you want a guy that thinks big picture, who's quick but has the pace, but is good racecraft and understands what it's going to take to get you to the finish.
Well, I mean, Cal, you were talking to Tim Sugden. I spoke to him last night as well, and one of the issues that team principals or managers or whoever Tim's role is about making sure you don't make unnecessary contact. You might think you can dive bomb somebody down the inside into Andretti Herpen, but if it's a marginal move, don't make it, because the downside is far worse than losing maybe 3 seconds and then regrouping and then making your pass further around the lap.
And I think there's a real learning curve for all of the teams that have competed all season to now come here with all this GT4 TCR machinery, John, is to learn the language, I call it, identifying the habits of the drivers around the racetrack throughout the course of practice and qualifying. Certainly they'll see that a little bit, and during the course of an 8-hour race you see the rhythm of the race. But the unique thing about sports car racing is you get those driver changes. So what a car did 5 minutes ago may be completely different now, because there's just a different driver behind the wheel. And conversely, for the GT4 cars, it's been alarming to see those GT3 cars, the closing, the rate of speed that they come up on you, and keeping your eyes wide open, looking in those rear view mirrors, maybe having a spotter to give you that information someone's on your tail.
Yeah, I mean, it's a busy racetrack. It's a short track, 2.2 miles around it, 11 turns. You've got that long section up the hill to the corkscrew. That is a maximum concentration part of the racetrack. And you're maybe doing 130, 40 miles an hour up in your GT4, BMW, Porsche, or whichever, and you've got a Bentley or a Mercedes breathing down, you're doing 15 mile an hour more, and he ain't going to take a prisoner. He's not going to give you the benefit of the doubt. He wants to make sure he gets through. The only caveat is, in our championship, I don't know whether it'll apply here or not, but the pro drivers in the GT3 cars, if they have contact with a GT4 car or a Pro-Am car, it will always be the pro driver that will be the one that will receive the penalty. You need to check and see whether that will be in effect here for tomorrow's 8 hours, but that's one way we try to control this kind of mission. Dive down the inside and expect everybody to get out of your way.
Yeah, they can't just vanish, and I'm pretty sure that will be how the rules will be applied here, because you're a pro driver and you've got that level of skill. Conversely, when I was talking to some of the GT4 teams, they said they come by you so close, and I said, well, you just need to recognize they meant to do that. They understood that's the margin. They're cool with it. When they come by that close, it's not that they just nearly got India because they made a mistake. That was intent.
Yeah, for some of these drivers, it's literally their first race or first weekend of competing, Greg, in multi-class racing. Absolutely. They used to run them with cars at the similar speed. So it's a big learning curve on both sides of the fence.
In this session, it's Alex Riberas who is at the top of the charts at a 124.8 at the end of their first flying lap here. That's in the number 17.
Also on average, they held the top spot as well.
And that, of course, is the key in getting through to the shootout. It's the average over your 3 runs. So we're in the middle, or just the early phases of Q2, the 43 Mercedes, and that's got to be a car with Raffaele Marcello. That's got to be, again, with race winner all over it, not just race winner, but championship winner too. And with Tristan Vautier in the sister car, they are going to be going at it big time. It's not going to be a race of after you, my friend. It'll be, well,
Lewis Williamson now behind the wheel of the 43. Yet to see him set a representative time in this session yet, but it looks like he's on a pretty clean lap right now. Great elevation change here. This is where you really climb up into that Rahal straightaway, and then the infamous corkscrew coming up. This is a very tricky corner, turn 6.
Turn 6 is my favorite corner. Of all the corners on the racetrack, with my brief knowledge of it, I love turn 6. Just for some reason, just felt it was a corner that worked for me, and I made it work. But the corkscrew, I never felt it got hold of it at all.
It's a tough corner, though, turn 6, John. You come up, there's a little bit of a crest as you dip in there and turn in, and it's. I found at one of those corners you felt, okay, I left a little bit on the table. You try to go a little bit quicker, and you missed it. You know what I mean? There's a real sweet spot on the turn.
Well, the thing I found was, you think you got a brake for it. This is a car with 120 horsepower, but I was able to just feather the throttle and avoid the brake pedal, so I could just carry the momentum, and therefore the exit speed was that little bit better. But again, with such little horsepower, as opposed to something with 550 horsepower, as we'll be looking at in the Mercedes, for example, it's a slightly different equation.
Well, it's a corner that when you get to that apex, there's that little dip, so you get that weird compression. You got to carry speed through it. And most of the other corners here have a certain amount of flow to them, and that one's just this angular thing. It just doesn't fit in, which makes it quite unique. I hope that was the PPM Lamborghini that was just parking essentially to let.
I think it was just letting the quicker cars get through.
Williamson has now done a 25.3, which on average with Marciello's times puts the 43 car back to the top on average.
Looking here at Andy Suchek in the number 8 M Sport Bentley.
It's been a fun addition to our Probably World Challenge Championship, teamed with Alvaro Parent in the K-Pax Bentleys in the Sprint X former competition, the 2 driver lineups that we've seen throughout half of the season.
They had essentially an awful year in the championship in terms of result because of luck. They had just unbelievable luck, but they certainly had pace, and it's nice to see him back and running here.
Good lap time for him too. 25.0.
So it's currently the 43 up top, the number 17 WRT Audi sits in the second spot, the number 8 M Sport Bentley in third, the 175 Sun Energy Mercedes in fourth, Maxi Book behind the wheel, and then in the fifth spot right now on average is the 911 Wright Motorsports Porsche with Frederick Makovecki behind the wheel.
And John, I think Robert Fry's kind of laid out the protocol really for these teams. They just want to make sure they're in that top 15. Yeah. They don't want to take any risk, just make sure they're in the top 15, then it counts for your grid.
Absolutely, they're just going to go through the process. And it's only if, for some reason, there's a driver error where they might lose overall position or some kind of beyond the driver control, they're just going to go through doing a flying lap, maybe maximum 2 flying laps, bring it back into the pit lane, park it, and wait for the next session to begin. And then they're assuming, and I'm assuming, that what I would call the pro cars, they're the ones that are going to be the top. There's 12 of them, and there's 3 Pro-Ams that will make it through into the top 15. In which order, it's somewhat irrelevant. It's all about the shootout later on this afternoon. And to some degree, even some teams may look at the shootout as being, okay, we get that additional set of Pirelli tires. We don't need to knock them things into the graveyard. We just keep them. That's a bonus we have by getting through to the shootout. It's a long race, 8 hours. It was only in last year's race where the race finally sort of became the race that everybody expected to be in the final hour or so.
And I think with the bigger field here this year, Greg, 32 cars, that means that shootout is 15 cars versus 10. So that takes the stress off a little bit more. I mean, getting in the top 10 is a lot different to the top 15.
You think about that race last year, John, when you were talking about, just don't dive up the inside of somebody and the like in the race. You think about it last year when those 2 Audis pulled that little loophole switch in the pit lane, went to the front. had the race covered, and contact in turn 10, the next corner coming up here after the rainy curve, when one of them tried to jump down the inside when they were both passing another car, contact, they both were out. I mean, it can happen that quickly.
Absolutely, and that's what they've got to be aware of. They know, particularly this year, you've got almost double the field that you had in 2017. So there's going to be double the amount of concentration and requirement not to get yourself into a situation where it's a downside of a result. But the pro guys will go at it, make no mistake. They will be out there racing. And be it Audi or be it Mercedes, which is the two teams we think are going to be the principals battling for the overall victory, let alone the championship, that they're both involved with, both manufacturers and drivers' championships.
Because that's what pros do.
It's sort of instinctive,
Exactly. By the way, speaking of, we have the other classes, just to update you, in the Pro-Am category, on the combined average, it is still the number 75 Sun Energy Mercedes of currently Kenny Habul behind the wheel of that car that is fastest in the Pro-Am category. 9th overall at this stage. Second is the number 42 Straka Racing Mercedes in the hands of David Fuminelli. And third is the number 63, and that is the DXDT Racing Mercedes in the hands right now of Mike Hedlund. And taking a look back, GT4, the combined has still that number 34 Murillo Racing entry, the team car of the one you see on the screen.
Shimshak and Shimshak. Right?
I know. Yeah, he's doing double duty here as that is the lone car in the field running just two drivers, so he gets a little extra track time. But how about second in GT4 right now? Matt Keegan in the number 51 Panos Avezzano GT.
Let's not forget Ian James is kind of the lead driver there. He's going to be driver number 3, so can they find enough on Ian's lap? Is there enough life left in those Pirelli P0s for him to lay down a really quick one and jump that Panos up to the top spot in GT4?
And a big story, too, for that Panos program, obviously, as you see that car. You see for the fans, and then Dr. Don Panos, of course, he was instrumental in literally, in many people's opinions, mine included, saving North American sports car racing and bringing it back to a place of huge prominence. Lost his life after a battle with cancer in September, and they made the announcement for the team. They said, we're going to run this race in Don's honor to carry on his legacy. We'll be back in 2019. Because that's what Don would have wanted. But that was his mantra for the entirety of the American Le Mans Series. It's for the fans, and that's why they carry that on the door.
See the signatures on the rear wing as well from the fans. Matt Keegan done a nice job there. Quick fist pump with the mechanics. Car is clean, ready to go. Stick Ian in and see what we can come up with.
Third in the GT4 category, though, the number 12, Ian Lacey Racing Ginetta. They did the race here last year. They said, we learned so much. And they are back this year, so great to see. And we're watching the car that on average currently sits fourth, Maximilian Buch, behind the wheel of this beautiful machine.
Yeah, Max is pushing. He's not 2 minutes of the session remaining. He's not sparing the tyre. He's pushing hard on this particular lap. Traffic coming up into corkscrew may well truncate the efforts because he'll not find a lot of space to get through without getting the elbows out, a bit of hip and shoulder coming down through
some
turns
traffic
9 and 10. So if he gets past the 65 Mercedes, that pulls over really and just lets it go through. And now he's got to contend with the Audi. What way is he going to go? And that's typical of what's going to happen. You can control to some degree your competitors in an equal race of cars, but in GT4 and GT3 mixed, sometimes it's not so easy.
Well, this is one of those situations, and I'd like to get your ideas on it, John. We've talked about it a bit. Is when you're in a slower class car and you're getting overtaken, don't help. Drive your line, drive a consistent race line, because the guy who's faster has probably planned that pass for 3 corners. The minute you move,
look, Calvin and I probably know this very well. If you're racing somebody and that you see a car ahead of you spinning, don't try and avoid it. Actually aim for it, because by the time you get there, it'll be out of the way. If you try to avoid it, you'll probably end up hitting it.
All the little tricks, that's for sure.
It takes great discipline. We're talking about this session, maybe the team just utilizing one set of tires to get through. But drivers are competitive, John. If your teammate just went out there and laid down or whatever, a low 24 in Macchiello's case, you don't want to be too far away from him.
No.
Do you know what I mean? Because your reputation is always on the line, and you want to be a couple of tenths is okay. But if suddenly you're a second or so away, it's like, what's going on?
But those teams, they recognize that the tire has got a performance window, and its first flying lap will always give you the best time, and then thereafter there'll be a fractional deterioration, then it'll plateau out for quite a long time, and then eventually that'll be the tire's life consumed. So the teams will be aware of who's been given the opportunity to go first. In the case of Marcello, set the quick time on the virtual first flying lap of a session.
Yeah, and talking to Brian Sellers this weekend, who's getting used to that Bentley for the first time, when they were doing new sticker runs during practice the other day, the guy who got in immediately after was about 6/10 off. And if you look at their times, Brian Sellers laid down a 25.5 in the driver one session. Baptista, a 26.1, so that's right around that 5/6 margin. So that's the little sweet spot that goes away on the tire.
And I mean, literally, the first flying lap, that it's almost like a qualifying tire scenario, that you've got that narrow window. One lap, if you don't get it done, if you haven't abused the tire too severely, you might get close to a good lap on the second flying lap, but you can kiss it goodbye thereafter.
Watching on screen right now, that's the number 2. That's the Global Motorsports Group. Audi in the GT4 category, as the looks like the checker flag is out on this second driver session, so he's on his cool down lap. That's Jason Bell, who's run with the team, really joined the program in the GT4 GTS category for the Pro World Challenge about midway through the season last year, and with working with Global Motorsports Group, which do a tremendous job of driver education, development, coaching, and the like. Really started to hit his stride a little bit. And I did want to point out to all the viewers that may not be familiar with this, you see that illuminated panel inside the upper right on the windshield. It's cycling between where you're running on track in terms of a running order, and then it'll cycle, it's the first 3 letters, the code that is used for the driver's name. So if you're wondering who's in a car and where they might be running, that's a quick way to be able to reference it if we're not on top of it. Hopefully you won't need to go to that too often. Now you can see it changing in the light right there. So Bell brings that machine in. And right now Shea Adam has been able to get down to the Team Land Motorsports pits and has found Christopher Haase.
Christopher Haase, you have the advantage of having turned laps around WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca prior to this weekend. How much of that track knowledge has come into play with your fastest time that session?
Well, I mean, track knowledge is always an important thing in such a complicated tracks like Laguna Seca, for example. But at the end, you need also a really good car which can do this. And right now, I think we are good sorted. So we have a good pace in the car. Good with Audi Sport Team Land, a really good team in the background. So, but being the fastest is nice, but it doesn't matter at the moment. We're looking forward to. Our target is to get into this shootout, which is the main goal. And from that moment on, actually, it gets really important.
If you do get into the shootout, will it be you, Maisie, or Kelvin driving the car?
Well, it doesn't matter which one is doing it. We're all on the same pace. And the decision is, as far is not done yet.
Not giving away any secrets. Good luck, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, looking at the lap times,
it's
he's had a
interesting
very relatively slow lap in the first session of 27.8 versus Haase's 24.1, so there's a big delta there, and that drops them down to the 13th position right now on average. But Peter Barron, we know very well over here, John. He's a keen strategist, has run his own team with Starworks, a lot of success over the years, and he really is dialed into the strategy. If there's a wrinkle, if there's a loophole, if there's any little play you can make, he's certainly been on top of it in past events. But he was the guy I was talking to yesterday about maybe getting into that shootout, but then really managing that set of tires.
As an example, you've just seen it, Cal. I mean, 13th isn't exactly the most comfortable position, and then I was going to be Kelvin van der Linde, who's going to be in the car in the final qualifying session. It puts more pressure on him. Again, whether the team will stick with that original set of tires from Q1 or whether they think maybe we don't want to take a risk, but fundamentally that's a quick car. Christopher Haase said, look, we're all at the same basic pace, give or take a tenth of a second or maybe half a second depending on the tire condition. So, as you point out, they're managing their situation to get through the shootout, and then you will see the true pace of that car.
I was going to ask you something here, just looking at that, in that the first time you talked about a 27.8, one of the slower times of that first session, the first drivers. by well over half a second. Haas's time in that, a 1:24.17, the fastest of this second group.
So
I wonder if they didn't have some sort of a little issue in that
Right.
first one, and they said, you've got to go put a time in
because they're not on the bubble, but sitting there in 13th.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the car that's 16th. There's only 4/10 off on average. That's a little bit too close for comfort. You want to get that extra set and be in that shootout.
All right, and of course, one of the fastest cars in the GT4 category is Christian Shimshak. Let's hear from him with Jay.
Well, Christian, getting a pole here at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca, not a totally foreign concept to you. You've done it in other series before in the past. But this GT4 Mercedes, what is it like around here?
Well, those poles were so long time ago that I forgot when they that even happened. The GT4 is quite a bit different. It's definitely a heavier car than MX-5. It's got a lot of creature comforts like traction control and a lot of stability control. So it's quite fun to drive, quite straightforward to drive. But yeah, it's definitely good to be back here and get pole at my home race. Yeah, it's fun.
The only two-driver lineup in the entire field. You and Matt Fastnacht expecting a busy day tomorrow or a super fun one?
I think it's going to be both. It's going to be really hard. I drove for an hour straight yesterday, and I was pretty knackered after that. So, so I can't imagine how 4 hours is going to be. But I think we can pull it off. It's going to be really fun, I think.
Good luck to both Marilla Racing cars.
The British term we used there, John.
Indeed it is. I mean, I don't know about American viewers. I mean, we're on a global feed, not just in North America, but the term, I'll let you say it again, Kelvin, it sums up that you're beaten up and tired. It's a busy racetrack. There's nowhere to catch your breath. Lots of racetracks, you've got big straightaways. You can sort of 10 seconds regroup, literally get your breathing back into sync. But here it's just almost like getting into the equivalent of a runner, getting into oxygen debt.
It's relentless around here, and especially you throw in traffic, and when you're one of the faster cars in a second class, you're not only dealing with the traffic you're trying to get around, but the mirrors are full, and every corner around here, you know, these GT3 cars, they're going to attack. You find yourself, just pinging in terms of stress.
I think fortunately, I mean, obviously driving a closed cockpit car, heat is a big factor, and tomorrow looks like it's going to be a little bit cooler, John, so that should aid that two-driver lineup. So high, potentially in the mid-60s, so pretty nice conditions to be battling through an 8-hour race.
Yeah, I mean, maybe more so for the drivers in the what I call mid-rear engine cars, the Audis, Ferrari, Lamborghini, the Porsche, obviously the engine hanging out over the back. But if you're in a mid-front engine car, you've got all that heat basically just ahead of you. So the heat soak is a function, but it is very well controlled. I mean, Mercedes in particular and Bentley likewise, they're so sophisticated now in every element of the design of the car. There's a talent, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely. There's a little pitch and catch. Having an awful lot of fun here in the entertainment zones here at Laguna Seca.
That heat soak we're talking about, John, I remember being at Daytona once, and just the heat that comes up and through the chassis, it was getting to the pedals. So every time I got on the brake pedal, it was like you were sticking your foot in a fire, and you just didn't want to do it, but you had to.
I mean, I don't know about you, but certainly Daytona for me was one of the toughest 24-hour races I've ever competed in. And again, the same thing, your foot, the sole of your foot becomes so either burned by the heat or burned and bruised by the constant application of brake pedal. And it was a relief just to get out of the car, to put your foot in a bucket of water and give it some chance to recover.
And as we're getting ready for the third drivers to go out, let's just give you a little bit of a look here. Up top, it is the two of the Straka Racing Mercedes AMG GT3s, the 43 and the 44. Third up is the 17 Audi from Team WRT. Fourth is the 175 Sun Energy 1 Mercedes. And rounding up the top five is the number 8 Bentley. A good run, and sits in that fifth spot. The number 911 Wright Porsche sits in sixth. Dirk Werner will be behind the wheel of that car coming out next. One of the guys in contention for the points, the number 19 Winkelhock, will be out in the number 19 entry, again from WRT. That currently sits seventh. Then the number 54 Porsche, the 75 Mercedes, and rounding out the top 10 is the number 7 Bentley. And we have certainly been talking about the lone Ferrari in the field from Vital Speed, and one of the drivers in that car is awfully quick, Shay.
Marino, you certainly know your way around Laguna Seca. You've won here before. The podium's moved, but it's still the same basic racetrack. What's it like in a Ferrari?
It's fun. It's a lot of fun. I haven't driven a GT3 car for a long time. I haven't driven a Ferrari for a long time. I hadn't driven it before this weekend, so it's been a big learning process for me. First time pushing on new tyres is there. I wouldn't say it was the best or cleanest lap, but it was okay. You keep some good tyres for the race. But it's just massive fun, having a great time with the Vital Speed guys. I mean, for Trevor, he's a real rookie. He's done some Ferrari Challenge stuff, won his first race in Ferrari Challenge recently, but this is a real baptism of fire for him. So Jeff and I are trying our best. Jeff has such experience. He's going out now, so I'm expecting big things from him.
If you get to the shootout, you're going to have to tie Jeff up in a closet somewhere so that you get to do it.
Oh, goodness, no. I said to Jeff the moment, I said, if we get in this, you're doing it. Because he has such experience with these Ferraris. I'm really leaning on him this weekend. And I'm having a lot of fun. It's nice to be back here and 8 hours of racing around Laguna Seca. You couldn't ask for much more.
Perfectly said. Good luck this weekend, Marino.
Thank you.
He's a great character, isn't he?
He
well
is.
as being quick.
Great to see him back here. He competed a couple of weeks ago, John, in Petit Le Mans, had a podium run with the Mazda team, Yo squad there. So that will have fueled the fire a little bit, and he's knocked the rust off. I think he'll do a great job this weekend.
Yeah, I was interested in his comment that he doesn't get to drive a Ferrari very regularly. But excuse me, are you not the son-in-law of Nick Mason, who's got a Ferrari GTO Berlinetta amongst many of his collection? I mean, I know, come on.
It makes a whole different perspective when you say to your dad, can I borrow your car, mate?
Something like that, yeah.
Totally. All right, we are green for this third and final segment of qualifying. And again, we will be taking these third drivers' times, adding them all together, and coming up with that cumulative average that will determine who goes to the pole shootout and who are done for the day. And we'll start based on the order that they have in this combined session here, 16th on back. And I have to say, the car that I think we're going to be keeping a close eye on, gentlemen, I would suspect most of all would be that 29 Landau. He's sitting there in that 13th spot.
Kelvin van der Linde will do this third sector here for that team, and he can't afford to relax. He's got to put in a pretty quick one to make sure that average stays up and inside that top 15. Otherwise, their strategy of getting that 11th set of tyres, John, will backfire here today.
Yeah, I've no doubts that Kelvin van der Linde will confirm that 29 Audi will be inside the top 15 very comfortably indeed. Kelvin van der Linde has been one of my stars of the 2018 season in the Blancpain Sprint and Endurance Championships. Has done outstandingly, in particular in the Spa 24. I looked at his drive there and felt that there's a young driver, and Sheldon, his brother, that they shared, and they're just really, really what you love to see. They're racers. They're not racing drivers, they're racers.
And he's one of the drivers that won here last year in that Magnus Racing Audi that he ran with Winkelhock. So
the car on edge a little bit there, John. And again, if they have utilized the same set of tires, the sweetness is gone. The grip that you get from that fresh set has been used up a little bit with two drivers already done their qualifying chores here this morning.
It looked a little bit through turn 3 that he was slightly off the entry but didn't get the apex, a little bit onto the dirty middle part of the racetrack, and the car flinched around. But he's on his way. It was the first flying lap, so maybe he'll get another clearer run.
It's fun to see these brothers, the Van der Lindes, the Van Toors, as you mentioned. Dries doing such a great job this season. His brother has just, last couple of years, just burst onto the scenes. Lawrence is just a phenomenal talent as well. So I think that competitive edge, the Franchides, they push each other a little bit.
Yeah, because sadly Dario is not racing any longer. He's getting involved in race broadcasts, doing a very good job. And oh, look at Dario. There's an example. I mean, it was never going to happen. Never going to happen.
Well, it's interesting. These three cars now that are now running, as I talked about at the top of the show, you look at the graphic package, the designs on the cars, those three, when they line them up in the right way, it's the American flag. It's very nice. They came up with this package to sort of honor the fact that this final round of the championship, the Intercontinental Championship, held here in the U.S., and running by themselves, you kind of wonder what is the deal, and then you see them when they're in close quarters, and it all sort of makes sense at this stage. Good look there at the 17. Stewart Leonard behind the wheel of that WRT Audi.
Dropping a wheel there briefly out of turn 4.
Yeah, Stewart is, again, a driver who over the last year and a bit, 2 years, has really come to the fore, winning, of course, last year the combined championship we have in Europe, and doing a good job. But, of course, just be careful. You're on a set of tyres which is in its third run.
He won at Bathurst, I believe, this year with Friends and Van Tour.
That was I tell you, I watched that race. It is I call it a horse of a race. It is unbelievable. The Bathurst, the Mount Panorama circuit, and look at that
wiggle!
Wow, all over the racetrack.
Leonard.
Stewart, that's over driving. And Stewart Leonard normally isn't guilty of that.
It was into the rainy curve. Tricky corner, boy, and look at the attack mode here.
That's Marcus Winkelhoff. That's Kelvin van der Linde.
Yeah,
I mean, absolutely, this is race driver stuff.
Doesn't want to give it to him.
I tell you, that's close. And if I was sitting in the pits watching that, I would be going, ooh.
Bentley with Jules Gounon behind the wheel right now.
They're back in the 26th spot.
Yeah, I think he was trying to set up a quick lap, so he didn't want to give it away there. I think Gounon has got intentions of laying down a lap right now and didn't want it messed up by that Audi getting inside him. He's got a little bit defensive and aggressive there with that move. After all, this is just qualifying.
And they need to get that lap in.
Well, they just want to get into the top 15. Yeah. That's their focus, and getting too close in two corners is not ideal.
Take a look there in the GT4 category. Current fast lap in this session for the GT4 cars, the 66 Racers Group Porsche. Spencer Pumpelly getting the job done and putting in a strong lap in the overall now, and in the average, in the combined, it's the 175 Sun Energy Racing Mercedes. Vautier doing a superb job in this session, turning the kind of times he needed to, and they've vaulted to the top. The 17 Audi Sport Team WRT entry of Leonard is second. And as I say that now, the number 43, the Mercedes-AMG Team Straka Racing entry of Maximilian Götz, goes to the top in the average combined. Fastest right now, Vautier in the 175, they slipped to second. The 44, Vitoris, now sits third. That is one of the Straka Racing machines. The 17 WRT entry of Leonard drops to fourth now, and in fifth, the number 8 Bentley in the hands of Soule.
And van der Linde in the 29 Land Audi has put in a pretty decent lap. They've lapped up to the 11th position. Maybe they feel they're safe there, John, in terms of not being too much on the bubble and missing out on this top 15 shootout.
Yeah, well, Kelvin van der Linde has into the pit lane right now, 8 minutes of the session remaining.
I finally got a quick Calvin back in the paddock, John.
Yeah, but I suspect they'd be back out shortly, because although they would be, in my opinion, in 11th place overall combined with what we've got up to just under 8 minutes remaining, I would assume that they're fairly safe, but they may want to go out and consolidate and maybe wait others come in, stop the running, get a clearer track, and not have to make what I thought were scary moves on the Bentley and two of the corners in the previous minutes.
Well, it on one hand, it worked for Gounon. He has now jumped from 26th and in the combined brought that car up now into that top 15, but it's still 13th.
So Westphal, he's put down a quick one. So Marino, we spoke to him just a few minutes ago. Suddenly that Vital Speed Ferrari number 87 is up to the 12th position overall and in the top 15.
As Götz brings the number 43 Straka Mercedes down into pit lane.
Brent laid down a nice lap. He managed to squeeze a 25.8 out of that K-Pax Bentley. So right now they're up in the top 10, which should put them through. And the way it works, similar to Formula One, John, it's all about getting into Q3, right? Basically, the lap times go away, you reset, and then you go again.
Yes, the difference, of course, that your lap time only reflects a position. It doesn't carry forward. And what I find attractive about this qualifying format is that we don't know the true complexion of what we will see in these three qualifying sectors until we conclude with the checkered flag just in 6.5 minutes. Of course, then we've got to go through it all again. In the shootout, the top 15, that will be the single fastest lap of any one of those 15 competitors that will then secure pole position. But as we've alluded to, we're not entirely sure that those top 15 are going to be, let's say, overly fast as to whether they're on the front row of the grid or the third row of the grid. It's such a long event, and with that additional set of tyres that they're going to get for the shootout, they may want to not use them to their full effect and keep them back as either a fallback set or even their prime set to start the race with.
You're talking about Westphal's time. It's one of the best of this third session. So, yeah, he's living up to the bravado his agent Marino spoke so highly of.
Marino's only 4/10 slower, admittedly, on slightly fresher tyres. So Marino can get the job done, certainly. And they're a good driver pairing. They've done a lot of racing together, and I think they're working really well with Beck to bring him up to speed as well.
Liqui-Moly has put in a nice lap in the 54 Black Swan Porsche, and they're now sitting 7th in the overall order. And again, that's one of our bronze categories, I was going to say.
Yeah, 26.3 for Tim. That's really strong to be within a second of Liqui-Moly. Very nice lap for him in session 2.
Here's a look at the Wright Porsches, currently 4th in the hands of Dirk Werner.
Yeah, it's for me, I'm an avowed Porsche fan. Doesn't take anybody with poor eyesight to work that one out with the cap I'm wearing presently. But just great to see the 911 still what's in it. Introduced 1964, and 54 years later, it's still capable of winning any motor race.
It's funny, isn't it? People have said for so many years, you can't have a competitive car in this day and age with the engine right over the back end of the car, and Porsche continues to prove them completely wrong.
They keep tweaking it, right?
They do. They do indeed. Sneaking around, one of the Murillo machines. It is the number 51, though, the Panos Avezzano GT that is atop the combined order in GT4 right now. In the 18th spot overall, the number 34, the Murillo car, Fosnot, sits in the 2nd spot. Then it's the number 22 of the automatic racing. That is the Aston Martin Vantage V12 that has Eric Lux.
Well, he could spring a surprise this weekend. Eric's really quick. Spoke to David Russell, who runs the operation. He said Eric hasn't done a lot of racing lately, but boy, oh boy, he's really impressed me here this weekend with his pace. He ran at Watkins Glen in the Continental Challenge race earlier this year, and was right up at the front of the pack there as well.
Yeah, I said V12. I meant to say Vantage, and it's a GT4 car that runs the V8, obviously. And then the number 10, the PF Racing Mustang, is the car that sits 4th. But there is a look at the Panos Avezzano GT. Started in the Pirelli World Challenge GTS category 2 years ago, or essentially last year, if you will, and worked throughout that year, 1, to get through some little glitches on the car, and 2, to get it ready for the full GT4 homologation. And on their way, the latter half of last year's season, they found some serious speed, Cal, and they backed it up this year. And then Matt Keegan has been a heck of a find for the Sprint Act round.
Yeah, they've been a great driver pairing, Ian James and Matt Keegan. Preston's had a brilliant year, had a couple of wins in class, but for Ian James, they won 5 of the last Pirelli World Challenge races this year, so they find their sweet spot in the summer and just come on strong.
Actually, Preston, to me, had one of the passes of the season in Portland on the last lap of the race when he went for the win with just a tremendous pass in turn 7 there. And he's fresh off of 2 medals, winning 2 more medals at the Sports Car Club of America's National Amateur Championship races. The runoffs, just the other side of San Francisco Bay here up at Sonoma Raceway, so he's been living large on the West Coast.
What a gentleman he is, and it's been fun to see that group kind of gel over the last couple of seasons.
Yes.
It's really a great group led by Tom Milner, of course, and a lot of the, I call them the old-timers, the Panos group, are still there from the glory days with their prototype machines. So just a really good squad of guys, and they've kept them together, kept the nucleus together, and they've got a lot of strength with the team.
Just look at the top 5 in the GT4 category, only 0.2 of a second covering those top 5. I mean, that is close.
Well, that's one of the things, this GT4 category, with the fact that the aero is not quite as intense on the cars, they're still close, but they produce some amazingly close quarters racing. So I think this could be a great little race within the race here. And this is the 626, it's the Reardon Racing Audi R8 GT4. Max Faulkner behind the wheel at this time, but David Roberts. But the first guy that went out, Vesko Kozarov, who has been very fast in Pirelli World Challenge Touring Car Division races over the years, but they've never done a full season, and so he's never really been in championship contention. And this year, they did the full season, and he won it and really was strong.
Well, there's the story of qualifying all those 3 Mercedes at the pit lane entry up on the air jacks. They're done. They've done what they need to do. They've got their cars through. And very much the session.
Just about a minute left in the session. So, as you said, most of the cars have made their way in. And, of course, the driver of the number 43 car that tops the charts right now on the average, who just got out of the car, is Maxi Götz.
Maxi, it's about all you can ask for. At the end of the day, your car was quickest in 2 of the sessions, and you were responsible for one of those. Super pole. How are you and everybody else going to decide who gets to go for the pole?
Yeah, so far so good. We had a good qualifying. We are running well. I did only one single lap, to be honest. So but this was enough to put the car on pole. Now the Super Bowl is coming up, and I think Raffaele will doing it because he's fighting for the title, for the championship against Tristan Vautier on the Sun Energy car. So it's going to be a nice fight between them. But I think so he should take responsibility to take the car in the first row.
Do you feel like you have not only a good qualifying car, but a good race car?
It's true, yeah. The Mercedes-AMG GT3 is a very good race car over the distance. Degradation is really high on this track, but our car behaves the tire very well. So we are able to do good lap times still in the end of the stint. So I think we can be happy. I think we are very confident going in the race tomorrow. And now let's try everything to put the car in front and then have a good starting position for the race.
Is that your big advantage? Better on tires than everybody else?
Yeah, I think tire management over the race is very important here. The degradation of tires are massive here, so you lose over the stint 3 seconds about, and it's all about how you behave, how you drive, and how you save tires in the beginning of the stint. So for sure you have to push, but not too much. Push too much, then you are really lost in the end. So and this is like the key to survive the 8 hours.
Good luck surviving.
Thanks.
Well, we've observed that over the season in the Pirelli World Challenge GT Series, Calvin, that Mercedes is so compliant. It just seems to work very well without losing that platform stability. They've just really built a heck of a turnkey race car, haven't they?
It's easy on the tires. It's really good into the brake zones. It's compliant with the curbs if you want to use them a little bit. So it's really the complete car. And when you look at some of the Pro-Am drivers who are put behind the wheel of one of those cars, it's not edgy, John. It seems to give them a real nice comfort factor when they're behind the wheel.
I mean, you summed it up. An edgy race car is not a nice race car. There are drivers who can handle it, who some of them are comfortable with it. But if you've got a driver who wants to have confidence, then currently the Mercedes probably is the car that would give that to the driver best. I mean, the Audi and some circuits throughout Europe is the quicker of the two cars. It's car per circuit. Some favor some circuits better than others. Overall, what Mercedes have done with the AMG GT3 is very impressive as a turnkey car. And you can more or less give it to anybody in the paddock, and they'll just slot into it. I mean, it's just a superbly engineered race car.
You're talking about Westphal, Cal. Take a look at the graphic there. The fastest lap in that third session.
That's something to hang your hat on in this company, John.
Look at that lineup.
It really is.
And there'll be people, the European guys who go, okay, that's in. Who's Jeff Westphal?
Who is he? Yep.
You know, we'll put his name down. And there's another one that's been looked at as Ricardo Baptista, Brazilian driver on the number 9, K-Pax Racing Bentley. So lots of interest. People will watch. They're not just, they come from Europe. They're not going to come with blinkers and assume that we are the best. They'll always have an eye for talent. One of those talents, funny enough, used to be a great European talent. I don't know what's happened to him, but he's in the number 3 Lamborghini, Richard Antonucci.
Yeah, he certainly had a great career going, kind of disappeared off the radar a little bit. But Baptista, you talked about him. We watched him this last couple of years in GTS competition, GT4 last year, John. And then this year, he absolutely dominated the final rounds of our championship at Watkins Glen. He's a very quiet, unassuming young man. Reminds me of Juan Pablo Montoya when he first arrived. Juan Pablo's come out of his shell in recent years, but when he first came here, wouldn't say boo to a goose, do you know what I mean? And but just did all of his talking on the racetrack.
I just hope that Ricardo isn't as keen on burgers as Juan Pablo is, because he'll be carrying a bit of ballast if he does.
All right, and we were talking about the great job that was being done in the GT4 category by the Panos team. Matt Keegan behind the wheel at one point. He's with Shea.
Matthew Keegan, no stranger to the Panos, but now a pole position for the 8 hours. The GT4 job is done. Ian James alongside you. Again, another recipe for success.
We sure hope so. I'm just blessed to be driving with a great team. Panos just does a fantastic job, and co-drivers are fantastic. We've had a lot of fun this season. We're really excited about being here and having a nice tribute for Dr. Panos, and hopefully we can have some success here for his legacy.
Put on a good show for the fans during the 8-hour race. How important is it to have gotten that pole, though? Because there's a lot of competition out there.
There's a lot of competition, and it's a track, being from Northern California, that I've spent a lot of time at, and I'm comfortable here, and be back here, and it's really nice to be able to be fans and have some success.
Good luck this weekend.
Thank you.
Yeah, he actually had an overall pole in the GTS series this year. He really has shown some solid form, and it's impressive. Let's take a look at the order. As we mentioned, it is the number 43 Straka Racing entry of championship contender Raffaele Marcello, along with Williamson and Getz. That will top the order here in this session. And, of course, this is all just leading into the pole shootout coming up. The number 175, Sun Energy 1 Mercedes, Vautier in that car at the end of the session. The number 44 Straka Mercedes is third. The 911 Porsche from Wright Motorsports is fourth. And the number 17 WRT Audi rounds out your top five. The number 8 Bentley from Bentley M Sport is in the sixth spot. The 54 Black Swan Porsche is seventh. The 42 Straka Racing entry. This is one of the cars carrying one of the bronze drivers, Nick Leventis, who also happens to be the team principal, is in the 8th spot, fastest of the Pro-Am cars, second quick in the Pro-Am class, 9th overall. The number 75 Sun Energy Mercedes of Lucas Stoltz at the end, and rounding out the top 10, the number 19 Team WRT entry, another of our championship contenders, and the defending race winner and champion Marcus Winkelhock. And then looking at the 11th spot, the number 9, and this is the K-Pax Bentley, which is the first-gen Bentley. Alvaro Parent finishing that last session. That's 11th. 12th, the number 87 Ferrari. Great job for that team. Very impressive indeed for Vital Speed. And that great lap by Westphal hauls it up into 12th. 13th, the number 7 Bentley M Bentley M Sport entry of Jules Gounon. In the 14th spot, the 29, boy, they just made it in for the number 29 entry from Montpass by Land. And rounding out that key top 15, the number 46, and that is the PPM Motorsports, our lone Lamborghini, the Huracan GT3 of Mishimi Godovic and Steve Dunn. And they are your top 15. In the GTC category, we had one car, that's the number 6, that will do that one, Antonucci finishing. And then we talked about in GT4, the 51 Panos, the 34 Mercedes from Murillo Racing, the 22, that is the entry with Lux we talked about a bit from Automatic Racing, and the the Aston Martin. And so let's go back, take a look at some of the highlights from the session. They certainly were there. Moments like this, the number 7 Bentley getting a bit crossed up. Some of the action, the lone Ferrari in the field looking for some clean racetrack now.
Yeah, the key was to play nice together, not burn the tires down in this 1 hour session essentially, but slip between 3 drivers, all taking their crack at the wheel, and then they'll select their driver for the pole shootout here a little bit later in the afternoon.
The car that eventually ended up second didn't get there without a little bit of drama. Brilliant job. Obviously not locking those brakes up or throwing that car sideways. A little bit of sideways there for the number 17.
Yeah, just pushing really hard there through Rainey. It's a difficult corner off camber, caught him out a little bit, but Leonard got it back together and put in a decent lap.
And here the number 43, and in that last bit of the session here, Maximilian Goetz doing a superb job making sure that car topped the order comfortably into the 15-car pole shootout, which will be coming up this afternoon. We certainly hope you all tune back in and watch that here. It should be beautiful. Temperature a little bit different. It's going to be a bit warmer this afternoon. It's going to make that session a lot of fun to watch. So make sure you come back and join us for that. It's been a treat. Appreciate it. And to a very busy Shea Adam down in pit lane, a big thank you to you as well. The Corkscrew, one of the iconic corners here. We hope you'll come back and check it out later. Sounds good.